Welcome to the Dahlem project Sprint3 review. This is the final review. The Dahlem group consists of Marciana, Brian, Evan, Devin, Michelle, and Jacob. I'm Evan. I'm going to walk you through the final sprint and the stories that we completed. Because this was our final sprint, one of our major stories was to finish any outstanding bugs that we had in the program so that it was in a final version. Jacob, Devin, and myself all worked on a task in this particular story. One of the tasks that Jacob completed, there was a close window option here which didn't do anything, so we removed that from the taskbar. Another one of our bugs was that when you started to time a task, it didn't automatically update the task up here. When you stop timing, you'd have to click on it. So now when you stop, it automatically tells you what time you're at. Another identified bug, somewhere the delete project option had disappeared and you weren't able to right click and delete a project. So now the delete project option is back and is working 100%. Jacob worked on this task. Another task, this is from the original memorandum project, had to do with the stickers over here. It was in Spanish rather than English, and there were options in here that were never implemented, so Jacob removed the options and got rid of the Spanish so that it was all cohesive in the English language. Another bug that we resolved in this story, this is the last bug. If you have a note that's already created and you drag a picture into that note, it would add the picture, but it wouldn't show up unless you clicked off the note and then back on it again. So we fixed that issue so that as soon as you dragged and dropped it in there, it shows up in the note. Another user story from the final sprint connected to Sprint3 had to do with the locking of the memoranda program and having a login implemented. Jacob worked on this story. He's created so that you can lock the window and it'll take you out and you'll have to log back in using your password, and then you're able to get back in. You can also see that when you run the program, it will have a login. And this will add security to the program for people who might have a shared desktop with someone else. One of our most crucial stories this sprint was the PSP that we wanted to implement. We broke this into 3 different stories. The first story was to create a PSP option here and design a panel and divide it up. Brian and myself worked on this story. Brian added the PSP option over here, and he divided the panel into 2 different sections and added the icons up here at the top. And I designed the panel down here at the bottom where the information matches a PSP form. The second PSP user story dealt with saving the data that was entered into the PSP form, connecting the data to task, doing the figuring for the different properties and making sure everything worked, and also adding an export method for the data in the table. This form I've just entered data into. I haven't clicked the save button, and once you save it, it automatically figures your totals here. The way the PSP panel works is that each project has its own PSP panel, and because each project should be one coding project, it makes sense that all the data in the table is pertaining to that one project. And what you can do if you want to get your to dates, which means all of your totals from all of your projects currently in there, you can actually hit this refresh button right here. It's going to pull in all the data from all the projects to date, and it'll automatically populate this for your grand total of time spent from all your projects, and it will figure all the data over here, the percentages in each phase. The attached tasks over here are designed to connect to the task timing feature that we put in during the second sprint. So when you click attach task right here, you notice it's zeroing out the actuals over there, because now the actuals are actually going to come from the task pane. So as you can see, all these different phases have their own task, which can be timed. So when you start time your planning, you can hit start. Here I've added time to the planning phase. We have 8 minutes 58 seconds. So when we go back to the PSP phase, we now have 8 minutes. It doesn't count for the seconds. We've added an export feature, and what this export does is actually creates just a basic text file with this data table. So we can call our text file something, and we're going to save that in the documents folder. Once you open up the export a text file, it's a basic duplication of what's in the panel. I worked on this particular story. The final story in the PSP panel dealt with the graphs. We wanted to create graphs of the data. I worked on this story. We have options down here, and you can select options for these two charts up here. This is time and phase estimated right now, so it's going to give us a pie chart breakdown of what it looks like. So as you can see, code takes up the most. And you can do this for the time and phase actual as well over here. The defects injected is also available as a chart, so you can see where most of your defects are being injected. This visual really helps if you're using this for true PSP. The bar charts down here are comparison charts, so it's going to show you the estimated versus the actual, so you can actually see, okay, how close did I come? Alright, it took me a little longer to do the planning than I planned for. It took me longer to do the design than I planned for. The final story that we chose to focus on was the look and feel of memoranda. We wanted to get in there and update some of the older graphics, the color schemes, and make everything more modern in its appearance. Devin and Michelle worked on this story. One of the first tasks that Michelle worked on was the intro splash screen from its traditional yellow. It's got this updated blue look that's really neat. The overall look and feel is all changed. Both Devin and Michelle worked on this part of recoloring the panels. This is the dark scheme right here, which is pretty popular nowadays. Michelle also worked on switching out these graphics over here on the left. They have a more modern feel to them. One of the other features, in addition to the new splash screen, there's a new about screen, so this has all been recolored. Looks a lot better in the blue. Another little improvement, we had a very badly proportioned graphic for the minimized graphic, and this has been updated to this much nicer blue graphic here, which matches the rest of the color scheme. Michelle handled that. You can also go into preferences and you can change the look and feel. So if you want to go to a daytime color, it actually reloads it with brighter colors. So if you prefer a brighter user interface, you can go to that option. But it looks great and looks a whole lot more modern and really finishes out our sprint. This is a look at our Scrum board at the end of Sprint 3 of our different stories. These are our tasks. Everything's closed. Everything's completed. This is a look at the burn down. Team Dahlem performed great during the project. We were able to create an updated and functional memoranda application which now functions as an all-in-one PSP tracking solution. Each sprint was successful and many features were added to the program and not just the ones which directly pertain to PSP. We overcame the digital divide and were able to support each other as a team, and the last sprint really worked well with us teaming up to complete stories. As a team, we learned the value of accuracy in our value planning. We know the need to be consistent with our task in order to gauge accurate velocity for tracking purposes. We learned how to work together within the stories, especially during the last sprint, where we were able to work back and forth on different stories and even on the same task to accomplish goals together. Our first major accomplishment was implementing the tasks requested by users of the original memoranda program. These were features which the original user base wanted and we were able to implement. Because these were actual requests from users, we know we added business value. Our second accomplishment as a team was being successful at gauging our velocity during each sprint. Even during the first sprint where we were unsure of what we could accomplish, we added the appropriate amount of stories, and we were able to complete each sprint without leaving anything in the sprint backlog. Our last main accomplishment was to update memoranda to a PSP tracking tool. We wisely implemented features using current functionality and built PSP on top of the functionality. The solution produces a practical, usable platform for anyone who needs an all-in-one solution for PSP. The Agile process is a very good way to implement a project. It works best when there is some structure to quality practices and where continuous integration is involved from the very beginning. We were able to translate the user stories into value a product owner would see, and the Agile process made this possible. The ability to focus on task at hand and move with velocity during the Agile process perpetuates a feeling of accomplishment and helps synchronize the team and goals. It also helps to keep focus on what needs to be accomplished before, during, and after each sprint without phases overlapping and causing confusion.